A lot of the stuff in this video is going to be building on and adding to the information covered in this video titled Eyes to See in the UV Blacklight Spectrum of Aquarius, Multispectral Perception Piercing the Veil. In that video, I cover James True's, I use excerpts from episode number 278, 279, and 280, where he attempts to explain the Mandela effect using an understanding that says, in his words, nearly verbatim, whether or not you like it, in the light of Corona, you've gone from 780p to 1080p, as in an increase of resolution due to more pixels per square inch. Or as I've discussed before, frames per second, you have higher resolution. James was also talking about a blacklight spectrum that's not based on white, the RGB red, green, blue spectrum, where all the colors are added together to make white, but it is a subtractive process from black. And he goes on to talk about how magenta was not a color that previously existed. Remember this, magenta was not a color that previously existed prior to the modern age and the advent of computers. Jay Dreamers is about to tell you that blue is a color that never existed prior to our current era. Also in this video, Eyes to See in the UV Blacklight Spectrum of Aquarius, I go over Jay Dreamer's take on the movie They Live, where he shows you, in his opinion, his breakdown of it, is that those glasses in They Live are like ultraviolet lenses. And he shows you examples of what ultraviolet lenses do and how it turns everything kind of a black and white color. And that's why every time the guy puts on the glasses to see they who live, you know, the reptilian alien guys, everything turns kind of black and white. But at the end of the movie, when they break the transmitter and suddenly everyone can see them for who they are, it's no longer in black and white because they don't need those special UV glasses. They're in a different spectrum of light, and that's what Jay Dreamer says in this video. I show that he says there will be a new light spectrum in our atmosphere, in our environment. This is Angry Catfish from yesterday.
We haven't really had a winter this winter because we've got three suns in very close proximity. One's right behind us. It's a blue sun, ultraviolet, black light. You can't see it with your eyes. You can see the results of the freaking light in your skies.
This is Suspicious Observer from yesterday.
Life intact when they happen again. Now folks, this story is wild. The light anomalies in the camera, they are not at all indicative of lightning, and they darn sure aren't signatures of dark matter as these authors have guessed. As we see one of the vertical bolts here, some notes. You can tell it's real and not a camera glitch because it wouldn't be behind the trees. That's a real beam. It's one of 4 detected in a matter of moments, all in less than half a second. All instantaneously appeared and then disappeared without craters, surface burn scars, and no thunder. That's why they guess macro dark matter, but even they mention major problems with that. They were clustered in time and location and have never otherwise been seen. Where would the other examples of this be? Furthermore, they lament its vertical profile, which would be quite the coincidence for any impacting particle, let alone 4 unique signatures in half a second. They do correctly hypothesize that the light is caused by glow mode plasma in a beam, and I will say that that's got Earth's geomagnetic L-shell lines written all over it. At the ground level, they are basically vertical. In addition to the solar flares ongoing during the sightings of those beams on Valentine's Day, the magnetic field of Earth is tossing anomalies at us left and right as it shifts. You may recall, the North Magnetic Pole has moved more, but it did have further to go. It's racing towards Siberia at this point. The South Pole is heading to meet it in the Indian Ocean, heading right past Perth and changing their geomagnetic field scenario quickly, which is a great explanation for the beams as those fields encounter new crustal fields and atmospheric conditions, and something I didn't notice before. the greater spread between the latest dots means the south magnetic pole is speeding up, and this marks the first time we've shared that tidbit here on YouTube.
So he said that there was 4 of these within a half a second in Perth, Australia. And that the way you can tell it's not a lens flare or a crack on the lens or anything happening inside the camera is because it goes behind the tree here, behind the roof here, and you can still see it a little bit there. Any sort of lens flare anomaly can't be behind a tree or behind a cloud. This is a thumbnail from Mr. MB3's video that he put out today, but it was one of those little short videos, so you can't even see the thumbnail other than in your notifications. That's why these little letters are over here. Because typically you can go to the video and then go back and then come back to the video and it routes you to the thumbnail photo. But it was one of those short videos. Nowhere in that video do you see this image. And I found it curious that he used an image of a sun, not only with a halo around it, but with little black square cube in the middle of it. Mr. MB3 has been catching 10.5 UV readings for the last 4 or 5 days, up until today and yesterday, and it dropped to like 9.5. Those are still summertime UV readings. Like there's a hole in the magnetic field to the point where it's letting enough solar radiation through that he's catching UVA and B at summertime readings. And then he shows you that there's UVC and that you should never read that. It should always be 0 at ground level, other than in the Arctic, where the magnetic field allows that solar plasma in. So in 2018, maybe even 2019, Mr. MB3 used to do UV readings on a daily basis. But then he quit, and for the next 2 years, he showed you genetic mutations of fruit and vegetables from strawberries, tomatoes, sunflowers, clovers that are 4, 5, and 6 leaf clovers littered all over the ground, the size of your palm. These are all genetic mutations from that radiation that he was showing you the readings of the prior 2 years. But then he stopped doing the UV readings and just showed you the results, the effect. He rarely does UV readings anymore, or at least he rarely publishes them, other than recently when he decided to show you that we're catching summertime UV, even high, super high summertime UV readings in the winter. And that it should be down around a 2 or 3 is the expected UV readings for this day, but it's up at a 10.5 for the last 4 or 5 days. So that's indicative of a hole in the magnetic field. This is a thumbnail from a video that Suspicious Observer put out today. He's the guy that put out the 4 beams from yesterday that we just watched. So that don't look quite like Mount Meru in the middle. And those videos where he showed you the plasma beams coming down, those apparently came from Perth, Australia. But it looks like Mr. Suspicious Observers might be alluding to that blue beam that Jay Dreamers talks about in his cosmology. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We'll get to Jay Dreamers here in a second. This is a thumbnail from Marfoogle News a few days ago. It seems to be alluding to the black sun, that blue ultraviolet sun maybe that Angry Catfish was talking about.
Which turns her mouth blue. Blue, depending on how far back you go in time, the color blue is also anachronistic because the color blue, technically, they say, did not exist. I would like to read you something pertaining to this, okay? There's a great study that you can do if you look into the color blue not existing except for in modern times. So this website here says, considering the Earth's oceans, waterways, and atmosphere, it seems the color blue is all around us, right? Well, it may come to a shock to you, but most ancient people never saw the color blue. That's right. Blue wasn't recognized. I feel like Miss Minutes should be reading this, right? Blue, where was I? Blue wasn't recognized in early human history because many cultures did not have a word for it. And strange things happen in societies when there isn't a word for something. Without a word, it becomes much harder to see that particular thing. Now, this is from a website trying their best to explain why there was no mention of the color blue until modern times. I'm going to disagree with this website and give you my own theory, right? The theory is that after each one of our cataclysmic shifts, the sky goes from blue to red, back to blue, back to red. It goes back and forth, right? There's also other colors in there in between, depending on proximity to the center of the Earth, your location, and some other things as well. But mainly, the sky is a reddish spectrum or a bluish spectrum. Okay, and there may be a transitory period in between those as well. So they try to explain this away by saying that they didn't have a word for the color blue. If the color blue always existed, why in the world would century after century, for millennia, no one would come up with a descriptor for that particular color? I don't buy that. What they're trying to say is if the word doesn't exist, then people become blind to it. They just can't see it because there's no word for it. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. You know what I mean?
I'm sure you noticed that the video wasn't synced up with the audio. Could you imagine walking around and in real life it starts doing that? Like sound speeds up and light slows down so you hear someone before you see their lips move? Stretch your mind, man. And here, I think Jay Dreamers is touching on the great philosopher Jim Morrison's preposition to take a chance with us and meet me on the back of the blue bus.
I don't know what that is, so let's skip that. Oh, it's a school bus. Okay, so remember, Sylvie, the female version of LoKi, she pruned herself and she wakes up in the same trash world that LoKi now finds himself on. She wakes up inside of a bus, right? Just like LoKi woke up at the bus stop, and there's a bus right there. You can see it, right? This is huge, and it's purposefully done that they put her entry point in a bus, and they put his entry point at a bus stop, right? They have that bus symbolism. You'll see this a lot in video games, in movies, in the television. There is a bus. The bus, the reason that they have that is because the word bus comes from and is directly related to the word box. It means a container. Usually it's a blue bus. Okay, not always. Sometimes it's yellow. Sometimes it's seen as being a magic bus or a magic school bus, right? Or whatever. It's a blue bus. Okay, not always. Sometimes it's yellow. Sometimes it's seen as being a magic bus or a magic school bus, right? Or whatever. It represents our world being the box, a container. It comes from the word omnibus, which means everybody inside of the container, right? And our world is that container, which is why the bus is quite often blue or seen as being magical or being able to change sizes and stuff like that. It's symbolic of our world that we live in. And that's why they come out of the bus, or why there's portals inside of buses and stuff like that. All right, so Sylvie,
So regarding this idea that we may be able to see things differently when there's a new light spectrum in our atmosphere, whether it's this blue ultraviolet sun that Angry Catfish says is creeping up behind us, or like James True says, in a blacklight spectrum where magenta is possible and that your resolution is increasing. I was able to adjust the color spectrum frequencies using just what was on my cheap Walmart phone and decloak what's up in the sky. As you can see here on the back of each one of these triangles, it has little fins on the back, fins on the back, fins on the back. There's a bunch of these parked at the front of runways. Using the contrast and lighting and color adjustments on my phone, zooming in and taking a screenshot and repeating that process over and over, I was able to reveal what's above our heads. So this might be an indicator of something like what we might see when the color spectrum frequency in our atmosphere changes, something like what I was able to reveal using that same process, but making the adjustments on the phone rather than in our atmosphere. Hold on. That prove intelligently designed craft of a massive size are right above our heads. So I'm just going to go over this real quick before I do a more thorough presentation when I'm going to grab some more images. But you can see these three triangle craft right there. They admit they got airborne aircraft carriers. Maybe I made them have to speed up the disclosure part. What you're seeing is intelligently designed craft in the sky. Much greater resolution on the other videos because here I'm filming phone to phone for the third time and it's just losing a lot of pixel clarity and quality. My point is, this is what I did using the phone, revealing that there's something above us and outer space may actually look something more like this. The previous clips that I've used from J Dreamers here were from his decoding, if you will, of the movie LoKi. Truth in Movies is what he calls it. But this is what he says when he shows this screenshot, is that outer space might look something more like this. And I've said before, it would probably be best just to assume that you've been taken aboard the mothership at some point, assimilated into an environment that represents your old environment you're used to, and that they're changing it quickly enough that you can't ignore it, but slowly enough that it won't send you into shock. My videos that I call Decloaking, Space Force, Airborne Aircraft Carrier, Floating Fortress, City in the Sky, originally, the best ones I should say, with those triangle craft parked at the end of runway. People that have been watching my channel know what I'm talking about. People that don't, you'll have to go back and watch. But what that shows is that there's highly advanced machinery above us in the sky. And I have revealed that in other videos where I took off my front porch. That one that shows the airborne aircraft carrier is a screenshot that I took from a video that was produced by a YouTube channel called KCKid913, where he makes his own homemade Santilli telescope, which is a dome lens, like a magnifying glass, 4x magnifying glass, on top of a beautifying mirror, which is also 2 or 3x magnification, and he hangs it out his car window. Unstable, using one hand to run the cell phone, and the other hand is holding his homemade Santilli telescope, also known as the Truth Bringer. And I took a screenshot from that Santilli telescope. This is called X-ray images of an airborne aircraft carrier. And I should lock in the focus at least. There you go. You can see triangular craft parked, one here and there, one here and there. They're parked in pairs. They're parked at the ends of runways. Oops. Taking it out of focus again, damn it. I'll just include some links in the description because most people have seen this already. And when I can take an image of the sky and produce that, do you see machinery there? These are docking ports. The symmetry alone of this proves intelligent design. When you zoom in on those are the triangular craft. All over in the sky, when you can zoom in on a picture of the clouds, run color and lighting contrast adjustments, and come up with this, there's machinery in the sky above us. Louis Farrakhan says that there's a giant mothership in the sky above us. Screwy Louis might not be so screwy after all. I'll include some links in the description, including Oops, Christ Did It Again, part 1, 2, and 3, because when I first started coming out with these slideshows, they were pixelating the hell out of it. So I started printing it out on pieces of paper, and even putting a piece of paper 6 inches in front of the camera, it would still pixelate out. That's filming phone to phone right now. There we go. Do you see machinery right there? Do you see a blue? It's like what you're seeing is something like, damn it, why won't it lock? It's like a blueprint. And I believe the way that I get this is something like an X-ray by adjusting the color spectrum, because that plasma comes through in a rainbow color. So you can adjust to one color spectrum and you'll see what's over here. It's obviously to a blue shift right here. But when I'm running these color spectrum adjustments, I find some details emerging and then I try and adjust the colors to where whatever's in this area comes clearer. And you have to sacrifice whatever's over in this area and whatever's over in this area, because the color band that's running through here might be green or blue. And over here it's already shifted to a yellow, and over here a red. As the plasma light is penetrating this craft, giving us something like an X-ray image of what's up there. And that's why people ask me, so if these are all at the end of runways, wouldn't that mean that that airborne aircraft carrier is upside down? Probably, if gravity exists up there, or I'm getting somewhat of an X-ray image of these things through that electromagnetic radiation that Mr. MB3 was showing you. This is a layout, a floor plan. And there are so many of these triangular craft all over this deck of this aircraft carrier. And they all have these fins on the back. And you'll see them parked 2 by 2. You'll see them parked at the ends of runways. And it is such a repeated pattern that I know it's hard to wrap your mind around, but that's what we're looking at, is triangular craft, massive machinery in the sky above us. There's all the ones at the ends of runways. Okay, so in this one, you've got 3 up here. 1, 2, 3, identical triangle craft. You've got at the end of these runways, these are all triangle craft too. I have other shots of them where I zoom in and show that these are the triangles with fins on the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I think there's a couple more. Here you can see there's a lot of symmetry going on at the docking port. We zoom in over here. Look at the ridges along the docking port and stuff here. This is another triangle craft sitting out here. These are all sitting at the ends of runways. There's no way that this doesn't have intelligent design written all over it. And there went my focus. Moss, focus. I'll get it, I swear. There we go. So, what do you think of that? When I take an image of the sky and run some color contrast adjustments, and I can pull that out, if we have some color contrast adjustments in our atmosphere, and you don't need to run the process with your phone, you just start seeing stuff that you weren't able to see before, well, then it could be a little wonky. There's the 3. There's the ones at the ends of runways. You see, that's a ship, right? That's a blueprint. That's a fortress. And you should definitely go watch the original. That is up there in Joe Sky. There's 3 of them, identical triangles, 1, 2, 3. Probably another one there. Look at these docking ports. Each one has 1, 2 little attachment points. You see the little attachment points, one there and there, one there and there? These are like docking ports. That's a floor plan. That's a blueprint. That's from the screenshot that I took from another guy's video off of YouTube. Took a screenshot, ran the color and contrast adjustments off of his video. And then I was doing it all the time to just random video that I would take of the sky, and sure enough, plenty of other stuff came up. But that alone should be enough to convey the understanding here that there's more up there than meets the eye, and with a little color contrast adjustments, you can see it. So, with the new light in our atmosphere, which is what Jay Dreamer says, he thinks there's a color shift that happens in our atmosphere. And the stuff that you couldn't see before, you'll be able to see. I'll do some more on these in the future. But suffice it to say that there's lots of machinery up in the sky. And it's gonna blow your mind, man.
Notice these equal distant ridges here,
Yes.
here.
We will notice those here in a moment.
We peer too close in there, we might see a naked space alien offend them. Might be looking right in through the bedroom window right here.
Yeah. Don't want to offend them. Be an intergalactic peeping Tom or nothing. You see these ridges though, right? Those equal distant ridges show intelligent design. If you want to tell me the rest of that is pixels, man, I've seen enough already. I ain't trying to convince you, the people that have been watching this channel a while. They've already seen it, so I'm going to move on. And I'll recap some of this in the future, because they're still pixelating the hell out of this. But I've got these paper copies still, so maybe I could re-upload it and they won't pixelate it. Because at the time, they were harshing a gig. So yeah, the plasma works as an X-ray, and you can run the color contrast adjustments on your phone like an X-ray technician, and it basically runs...
I see one walking down the hall right there.
Sure, pal. And it basically runs to a different depth, just like an X-ray technician adjusts the frequency of the machine to scan the bone density or the tissue density or something in between by adjusting which color you're focusing on. In all of these, you'll notice that the area with detail is here, and over here there's nothing, and over here there's nothing. As I ran these contrasts where I see details start to emerge, I continue to run the contrast in order to bring it out in this area, because you have to sacrifice this area and this area in order to get the detail where you're getting the detail at. Because these color bands are close together, so you can only, so by adjusting which color you're tuning to in your phone adjustments, it adjusts the depth that color was penetrating on the ship at that moment, something to that effect. Anyway, I'll do a new video on this in the future.
To move the glare so we can get a little closer look on some of this stuff.
For those who want to look some more, I'll leave a bunch of links in the description. Prepare to have your mind blown so hard it could fracture your skull, and don't hold me liable for damages to your dome. Because that's really up there in your sky above your dome. Yar. Okay, we're doing drive time with Jeff here for a minute. Multispectral analysis allows us to penetrate natural barriers is a quote that Jay Dreamer's pulled from the movie They Live. And then he knocked on his skull to imply that he thinks that natural, and then he said that that natural barrier could be your skull. But what I've done was penetrated some sort of barrier, whether it be the firmament, the veil, or an artificial technological barrier like a cloaking apparatus that they spent trillions on. I penetrated it through multi-spectral analysis by running the different color spectrums, contrasts, lighting adjustments, blacks, whites, and penetrated a barrier that conceals all of that machinery from us otherwise. I'm gonna go show you some blue lights that they just threw up in my area. And I know that if I don't do it now, I never will, since I'm on the subject. And you can see just an example of regular lights, the old lights, they're whitish. Maybe I'll pull over and wash my windshield, but you'll see. There's some that they threw in down here at a school. Some of these blue lights that people have been seeing pop up all over the country. A month or two ago, it was a thing that the truthers noticed, and then it just kind of went away. Here you'll notice white on the right and orange on the left. Well, there went the orange. I'll show you some more down here though. So here's a white, and then here comes an orange. This is like the old school lamps. Then you can see a white mixed in over there. I'll roll down the windows when we get up here to the blue, and you'll be able to see all three examples: the orange, the white, and the new blue. There's another white one mixed in with all these orange ones. So here's the orange. Can you see the blue over there? Since you already got an idea of what it looks like through my dirty windshield, that's the school. And then we get back to these orange lights. I figured since you've already seen it through my dirty windshield, you've got a good idea of the contrast. I'll whip around and show you with the window rolled down. Look how blue it is. Huh? What is up with that? Oh, a manufacturer defect, I'm sure. It started out white, we swear. How bizarre, huh? And that's a school. So I've also covered a thing called blue LiFi, like your Wi-Fi transmitting information through the air, but it's LiFi transmitting information through light. I've also covered the blue light that turns the mouse into an instant killer. When they shine this blue light on its brain, but the clincher is, before the mouse is susceptible to the blue light, it has to be given a virus in order to make it susceptible to the blue light. And the one that they showed us had a blue light going straight in through the mouse's skull, like they had to drill a hole in his skull in order to shine this blue light down on his brain. Possibly they could get in through the two holes on the front through your optic nerve. Or, my bad, it's like they're setting up checkpoints, because we've seen these purple lights on freeway entrances and major intersections, and over there at the school. So maybe they're just like checkpoints where they can drive you through and check your pupils, make sure you're not a reptilian, round up the reptilians. You'd be all for that, right? But not if they're checking for your quantum dot tattoo, right? That's what I thought. Because I was going on and on about how it would be like in the end of the movie They Live, when you can see everyone for their true colors, and they would be able to see it in the others but not in themselves. You know, and about how the parable of the beam and the mote is referring to a vertical slit pupil and a round human pupil. And the alternative is to believe in the guy with a 4x4 sticking out of his face, depicted in murals, paintings, and sculptures that depict the traditional interpretation of that scripture. And just to say it before someone puts it in the comment section, yeah, it could be a checkpoint to see if you glow in the dark with luciferase. Oh, I don't know if you guys heard, but the CEO of Moderna was on Fox News with Maria Bartiromo, and they were talking about how there's a little strand that's been patented 3 years before this all started. And it turns out that little strand happens to be at the cleavage point where it attaches to the, humanoids. Also that they got a little HIV, just a little tiny bit of AIDS that they're using as a base for the manufacturing process. But don't worry about that. So when I was saying that it won't be long before there's a, in fact, there were bars and restaurants saying, un-V people only. People were like, how do you prove that you're un-V? Well, you're going to have to now. When people find out what was in it, they ain't going to want you to come kissing up on them until you show, you're really going to have to get a test. And maybe that's why Prince Harry's saying, all right, everyone's got to go get the test. The HIV. And they got a new super HIV. Yeah, a new super variant of the HIV. The H to the I to the V. But all that nonsense is just a distraction. And I got too much of a library to risk. Anyway, I thought it would be a perfectly fine time to show you this blinking. What color is it? Violet. What frequency is it? Wait for it. Wait for it. It'll increase as I get closer. See it increase right there? It's a laser, and I can make it go around the screen. And then it slows down as you back away, like woodpecker. Come down here and get a little closer. So when I go in close, it's going to speed up in frequency, but here it's a right there. Right about there. I'll leave the top off so you can see how. Back up a little bit. Close in. Back up. Close in. And you cannot see this with the naked eye. Of course not. People would be like, don't flash me, bro. And you can see it if you look through the phone, even with the phone on and everything, but only when you're filming it with another phone. When you're looking at that with your naked eye, you can't see the flashing dot. Of course not. People would be like, don't flash me, bro. Don't blink me, bro. What are you doing? And it seems to speed up when the light goes on. Here, I'll move my shadow just to give you an idea of how truly visible it is through the phone. But with the naked eye, completely invisible. So we were talking about ultraviolet and the blue LiFi that they put into the dome of the mouse to make a violent, hostile, aggressive instant killer. and how they might be able to just port that right in through your optic nerve. You getting it, right? That's a laser. Might even be able to penetrate the natural barrier of your skull if they use multispectral analysis, like some infrared and some ultraviolet and maybe some other. Maybe they can port it in without drilling a hole like they did with the mouse. By the way, 1 month ago, you could see the three kings rising on the eastern horizon right at sunset. Right now, you can see the three kings up a few degrees, an hour past. Like at sunset, they're up here now. A month ago, they were right at the horizon. But they're still close enough to the horizon that you can see they rose vertically. This is the time of year, winter time. You can't see them in summertime. I meant to mention a month ago, because I told you before I would, that you can watch them rise and then set on the other horizon, horizontally. They rise vertical and set horizontal. But like I've said, they don't go straight across. They go up and then they go over. It's kind of like a curved arc through the sky. But they rise 3 vertical. They set on the other horizon 3 horizontal. Just like the 90-degree turn that the moon does every night going over. When it's half moon, you can watch it rise vertically and then set horizontally. But it's not straight over and turns. I think the reason it looks like it sets horizontally is because it's going at like a 45-degree arc or something. Anyway, you can see it on one horizon vertical and the other horizon horizontal. Every time it's half moon, it turns 90 degrees throughout the course of one night. Only at this time of year can you see the three kings. During the summer, you can't. But when you can see the three kings doing the same thing, rising vertically and then setting horizontally, that tells you that it's not the moon turning in the sky as it goes over, because the three kings are doing the same thing. That tells you that it's us and our rotation that has changed in such a way that we now see the moon and the three kings of Orion's belt do a 90-degree turn, what appears to be a 90-degree turn, as they pass through the sky. But they don't pass straight over and turn. They kind of go like this. Anyway, thought I'd mention it. Meant to mention it a month ago on the Three Kings thing. But every time there's a half moon, you can see the same thing. But for those that have already seen the half moon, when the three kings go with it, it tells you that it's our perspective. Not the moon actually turning differently. Because the three kings are showing us the same change in their perspective, or our perception of their movement through the sky has the same change as the moon. That means it's actually us that's done the change, not the movement of the moon or the three kings.